right, I think we are ready to get started. So first of all, I want to welcome everybody to our University of Houston and the Sales Excellence Institute's panel discussion on the state of retail. And specifically, we're going to hope to get into some conversation around the customer experience. We've assembled a great panel. I'm going to introduce the panel in just a minute. But in order to help our time go smoothly, I wanted to cover just a few logistics things. So first of all, I'd ask just if anybody has any questions as we go, if you would post those questions in the chat function, and then we'll get to those questions. We're going to try to allow 15 minutes towards the end to cover any of the questions as we go. But our goal will be obviously to wrap up right at 2 o'clock. And just as a reminder, these experiences are always way better when, if you are as a participant, if you can mute yourself. I would encourage people even to mute your video. Our panelists will keep their video on. That way it's a little bit less distracting, but that would be helpful. But we're excited to bring you this. I think it's a super esteemed panel. I got a chance to chat with them a little bit earlier and share some of their experiences. And so we've got first joining us from the University of Houston is Dr. Partha. Partha, I probably won't say your last name as cleanly and as clearly as you would, but thank you. Thank you. Partha is a professor of marketing at University of Houston, and he's been at the Bauer College of Business now for 23 years. And he actually specializes in understanding customer engagement, customer retention, and a number of other aspects associated with the retail environment. So we're excited to have him as kind of our resident academic expert on our panel. And then next from Mattress Firm, we have Sunni Goodman, who's the Vice President of Communications and Customer Experience. And Mattress Firm is the largest mattress specialty retailer in the country with more than 2,500 stores. And so Sunni's been working with them for quite a number of years, so it'll be great to hear from her experience. Then from Target, we actually have Christina Badmoos here who's joining us. She's a store director here in the Houston area. And I wrote down a little description of Target, but then I thought, you all probably know who Target is. So I won't go into much of a description. And then lastly, from Verizon, we have Marcus Alexander. Marcus is Director of Retail Sales. Again, Verizon is they're a global leader in delivering innovative communications. I'm sure many of you are familiar with them. One of the things that I noticed earlier, and I made a comment to the panel, is I am an advocate supporter of each of them. I shop at Target, sleep on mattresses from Mattress Firm, and my cell phone provider is Verizon. So this is a great chance to talk to providers who I've had a chance to experience a number of their products. And so what I'd like to do is just kind of set up a little bit of our discussion around retail. As I was searching for headlines about retail and COVID, I didn't have to go very far to see things like, devastating effect. COVID itself had massive impact on many, many industries. And then even in the retail sector, it had varying degrees of effect on some. Groups like the grocery business were affected dramatically from a boom. And then, a number of other folks in the, places like the apparel business, the restaurant space, they experienced the opposite of a boom. But retail has been impacted quite a bit. As recently as yesterday, I don't know how many of you read the headlines, but the U.S. Commerce Department reported that retail sales in May were up 30% versus April. Pretty significant increase, although April was a tough month. But interestingly enough, May was virtually flat, up 0.6%. So I call it virtually flat in a year-over-year basis in retail, which I was a little bit surprised. But in many sectors, it does seem to be bouncing back. And I like this quote from the article. It said, while May's performance suggests a decent recovery, there are several dispiriting caveats, including whether the bounce could peter out as demand falls off again. And so that'll be a bit of a part of our conversation today. We're noticing a number of trends playing out in retail as coming out of the pandemic itself. Trends like the big shift to e-commerce, mentioned that retail was flat in May, but e-commerce business was up between 30 and 32% year over year in May. So big shifts to e-commerce. We've got this idea of the impact of healthy shopping, what consumers are looking for related to it. And then lastly, this whole phenomenon right now, and I'll be interested to hear from our panelists on how this is affecting their specific industries, but this phenomenon of, some call it nesting. Another phrase I heard was in-homing, but the fact that people are spending more time at home. They're not vacationing, they're not going out to entertainment sites, so they're using their money to invest in their home. And so as you read the headlines, you see kind of these contrasting views of the future. On the one hand, I've read stuff about people being optimistic because of demand bouncing back. And on the other hand, I read about people who are still highly concerned because of what's happening in the economy. So what I thought we'd do is just start our conversation with our resident academic, Partha. And maybe Partha, if you provide us with maybe some insight or a little bit of the latest research or anything that you've come across that helps frame up kind of where we are in retail and how we're thinking about the future.
I will, Craig, thank you very much, and delighted to be with the remainder of the panelists and delighted to be in front of the audience here. And one of the things that I was looking at as part of the preparation for this webinar was to find out if there is any quick insights that we have from reliable sources. And I found one that I really liked, which is a McKinsey report on the consumer behavior changes. And they are talking about 6 basic trends. And this is data collected from thousands of respondents across the world and primarily the US. And what they're finding is there are 6 trends, and some of which echoes what you mentioned, Craig. The first is the net consumer optimism has decreased, and they expect that this to have a longer lasting impact rather than an immediate kind of a recovery or something. That's what people are expecting. Second thing is incomes have declined, and the movement is towards essentials, uh, with few exceptions, like certain countries they're rebounding back. South Korea and China are. The third is what we are obviously experiencing ourselves, which is shifting to online and digital solutions and reduced contact channels to get goods and services. By reduced contact, we're talking about curbsides and stuff like that. And for people are feeling a pull towards the homebody economy. That's a phrase that they are using, sort of similar to what you were talking about. A lot of consumption is now taking place inside the home, and therefore there will be greater demand for products that will allow for in-home consumption. That is the fourth trend. The fifth and the sixth trend is kind of relevant for retail, I think. Consumers want extra reassurances to resume day-to-day activities outside of their homes, that they need to know that something is being done to assure their safety. And sixth, more tangibly, they want to see ongoing demonstrable emphasis on cleaning and safety. So, for example, usage of masks and barriers, which I think United and the US Air, they have started it recently, if I'm not mistaken, that they will not board anybody without a mask. That would be seen as a good sign by the customers. That is, the retailer or the firm is taking a proactive step to encourage or insist on behaviors that will reduce risk. So those are the 6 trends that the McKinsey report talks about, and goes into great detail about how there are changes with different countries. But the US trend is not particularly different compared to the other countries. So I'll stop here and let others chime in.
Yeah, no, that's really good. I appreciate the trends. I would be curious, as Partha kind of listed some of those trends, and Sunny, maybe we'll start with you, and then we'll kind of work our way through the panelists. But in terms of the changes from COVID and maybe some of those trends, any particular ones that you all have experienced inside of your business that have had a significant impact on the overall business?
I think we really hit on, Matchroom is experiencing most of them. So we knew pre-COVID that we needed to have a more omni-channel seamless experience. So we had to beef up our digital and online capabilities. So we already had a great roadmap going into it. And the, I guess, byproduct of COVID is that we had to accelerate that program pretty fast. So luckily we have a very adaptable team. I think you were chatting with us earlier that that's becoming the differentiator for a lot of companies, is that you can adapt. And we've been through quite a bit as an organization. So this was another area where we had to kind of be hyper focused on the things that we needed to really make a big amount of movement in a short amount of time. And so fortunately we were able to do that from a digital standpoint. Historically in the mattress industry, there's been pent-up demand after any sort of down period or recession, or we know people are going to purchase around life moments. People were still purchasing around life moments because those moments were still happening during COVID. Just because we had to close down a certain number of stores didn't mean that that demand necessarily went away. So being able to beef that up was really beneficial for us, where we're able to be very precise about the type of consumer that's shopping, where they're shopping, which was moving to online, and then be able to meet that demand for them. And then also on the delivery front, we had to make sure that people felt safe, that they were getting the delivery that they need, which some of them still want us to come into their home, because a mattress is not an easy thing to set up and then haul away their old product. So we really focused on how do we make sure that that's the safest, cleanest environment for people, through upping our sanitation methods, from something as simple as a lot of communication around the CDC still recommends that the number one thing you can do to be safe is wash your hands regularly. And then some of those visual cues that Partha mentioned, as far as masks, gloves, having people actually see that you're using hand sanitizer, that you're wiping the trucks down, you're wiping the counters down. So we really enforced a lot of those measures. And then we did those in stores too. In Houston, we were fortunate that furniture was deemed essential. So you probably noticed that many of the Mattress Firm locations in Houston were not closed. And we saw people still coming in because they had a real need for a mattress, whether it was they had people sheltering in place with them and now they needed more places to sleep, or a kid transitioning out of a toddler bed into a big kid bed, or they're just the fact that they're home and they're realizing that their mattress isn't as comfortable as they would like it to be as they're spending time at home. So we also had to shift and make a lot of those adjustments in our stores as well. And if you go in today, you will see that our associates are wearing masks. That's for their health and for our customers' health. We've upped our sanitation methods. We have hand sanitizer available. So we also have a log that customers can see, going back to those visual cues of we're cleaning on a regular basis and we're documenting when we're cleaning, so that we can signal to the customer that their health and safety is important to us as well.
Okay. No, that's really good. Some great best practices, kind of practical things that you're seeing that you had to put into the environment. Christina, how about for you guys, some of the changes that you've seen and how you've responded?
I think just in general for us, I mean, even like in the beginning when COVID had just become like this major thing, we saw literally like mandates being put out, and people were really and truly like in fear. They were really panicking. So we saw a huge increase in our traffic trend here at Target. And I mean, luckily we're able to serve our community. But at the same time too, we saw a shift in like where our businesses were increasing. So definitely in essentials, in food, in home, even in apparel in some cases, especially in like newborn, infant, toddler. That was a huge area where we saw an increase in and baby essentials. So, I mean, for a while, yes, there was this huge boom, but then again, it really affected our supply chain at a certain point in time. And for us really wanting to be there for our community, we were like, okay, so like, how do we pivot like in this unprecedented moment to still be able to provide these essentials to our guests? So luckily we were able to figure that out. But then we also noticed that, of course, our guests want anything that's going to be low risk, contactless, very minimal interaction. So we noticed a change in the way that they were interacting with our own team members. So having to teach safety practices, having to implement a lot of signing around the store, having to really go through and retrain our team to understand what health and safety really looks like now that we're in the midst of a pandemic was a huge change for us. So utilizing our self-checkouts was a big deal, ramping up our digital business, whether that was adding more drive-up sanctions outside, because we're seeing a lot more drive-up traffic. We're seeing less OPU traffic. We're seeing, which is order pickup, seeing a ramp in ship to store versus ship from store. because guests were wanting to actually check out what it is that they're getting before they actually take that product home with them. Also, like closing down our fitting room. So that was something that definitely affected our apparel business that was actually doing amazing before, I would say pre-COVID. But also like just going through and making sure that our teams were wearing masks, that we were recommending to our guests to wear masks, that we had visible signage throughout the store, just promoting social distancing, having those overhead announcements every 30 minutes, just making it like a real thing, because everybody was really reacting to it differently. And just like on the consumer side, we wanted to make sure that our team members felt as equally as safe. So providing a safe space for our vulnerable guests to shop as well, like literally designating certain days and times for them, was something that we really wanted to do and make a really big deal and really be vocal about. And also extending that to our team members, that obviously they're guests at some point of the day when they're off the clock. So and then extending those same policies to our third-party vendors, and also our ship shoppers. So there was like just a lot of general concern, but I feel like our company really like pivoted in the moment and just was nimble, and they really listened to feedback. So I think our guests were very appreciative of it, and I think just kind of talking through the reassurance that our guests wanted, like we implemented for as an example, like 150 hours dedicated to a cleaning team member that's going to be at the front of the stores, wiping down carts, talking to guests, letting them know like, hey, I'm not just sanitizing this for you, I'm disinfecting this for you, and really just bringing that differentiated experience to our guests that they weren't used to before while shopping our premises. And then having a visible cleaning team member with a cart with an actual viricide like in their cart. The guests see us doing that, especially in like our grocery department, that saw a rise in just transactions and basket size and all of that good stuff. So there's been a ton, and I will tell you, it's been rolling out daily. So my team at this point is like expecting me to like have a huddle and talk about something new. But I think just in general, the guests are super appreciative. We saw a ton of positive feedback. Like our net promoter scores have really gone through the roof, and it's a high focus on safety. So those are just some of the things that we saw change.
Yeah, no, that's really good. And I love the sharing that last point on that. Your net promoter scores have gone up since this has been happening, because the, expectations reset with consumers. But then, you and Sunni, you have some examples. Marcus, I want to hear some of yours, but that organizationally, you guys have been very proactive in doing these things. And now people like it even more. The experience is even better, and they feel good about it as you talk about it. So that's great. Marcus, how about for you and Verizon? What some of the changes that you guys have been making?
Yeah, thanks for asking. So as Dr. Partha highlighted just a second ago, that the consumers have been changing the way they want to interact with retailers for a while now, and so we've always been dedicated to allocating capital, and just as importantly, research groups and even hiring outside agencies to be able to understand how consumers want to transact with us differently. And we've done a lot of research, and we've been outlaying principles such as using our application, using our online experience to also translate to what happens in the retail store. But what has also happened with Verizon is you have to make sure that you are dedicated to 100% of your customers. And there are a lot of customers out there that still don't believe that we need to have masks, still don't believe we need to social distance. But in our retail stores, we require that for our customers to shop with us and for our employees to engage with customers. You have to be wearing a retail mask, wear a mask, a face covering. You also have to be able to social distance. We have sanitation stations set up all throughout our stores. We have markers that outline the 6 feet recommended distancing. But when you think about it, we are a technology company, and we also have to make sure that technology is working for us. And so that way, to stay apolitical, we use technology to be able to really change the way customers work with us. So before, you'd have to walk in and physically hand us your ID. Now you can validate your account through your application when you're at the store. If you want to check in to be assisted, you can do that through the application. If you want to start your shopping experience online or on the application, you can complete that transaction in the store, and we're there and able to assist you. So it does still have the physical comfort of knowing that we are maintaining the safety standards that the CDC has recommended, but also just as importantly, we are allowing people to be able to transact and interact at their own pace. So whenever they do come into the store, we can complete their transaction, we can initiate their transaction. It's really been healthy for us. And the great news is we started that process long before COVID. COVID has just allowed us to accelerate what's been happening and how customers engage us. So great question. I think that the aspect that all the panelists have shared so far has been spot on to what we're doing at Verizon as well. And Dr. Partha highlighted that whenever he walked through like what the consumer demand and the consumer experience and the expectation is as far as being simple, easy, and convenient.
Yeah. Yeah, hey, Marcus, I'm curious, you had mentioned specifically because you talk about technology, and I know technology is, if you're in retail, you are having conversations about technology and how you use it, where you use it. Well, you're a technology company. Some of that functionality you talked about with the app, was that there prior to COVID, or were you guys able to accelerate some of your developmental stuff over the last 60 days to bring those things to life?
It's a combination of both. So before, we used to have it where you could start your experience on an app or on the phone or in the store, and you could pick up where you left off. That's always been there. As far as being able to sign terms and conditions, be able to process your payment and validate your ID, those are things that COVID has accelerated. They were already in development. Funds were already dedicated to being able to do that type of transaction. It's just COVID allowed us to really accelerate it, and people understand why without having to convince the public this is the safest and most convenient way to be able to transact with us.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's really good. And maybe it wasn't on my question list that I distributed to you guys, but I said, hey, we'll adapt a little bit. But technology and how you're using technology in and around customer experience. I'm curious if any of you have any other examples of the way technologies maybe playing a more meaningful role in your interactions.
Absolutely. I know for us, like just thinking through like our digital business with our drive up experience, that has changed a ton. So literally like guests now just signal to us to actually sign for their purchase. We scan the barcodes actually through their car glass door. And it's to the point where they open their trunks and we put the purchases in their back trunks. Everything is very, very contactless. Even when it comes to like consumer cellular, they can now purchase it, go home, call us back. They have a direct line to us and we activate over the phone. So a lot of that has truly, like COVID has really played a key role in us moving that forward, even though it was something that we had the capability to do before. Another thing I would definitely say is kind of around how we use some of our reward incentives in store when it comes to like shopping Target Circle. I know we talked a little bit about giving them the freedom and the convenience to shop any way that they want. So if they come in and they want to purchase items or get a promotional discount, I'm pretty sure some of you guys should probably shop Target. You can save those promotions now on your wallet. You come to the self-checkout, which previously was like despised by our guests because they thought we were trying to like, it was very much.
You're trying to make us do all the work, right, Christina?
Right, when that's really not what it is. So I know for my store in general, we view it as like a guest-assisted shopping experience now, where we kind of talk the guests through how to use that new technology. If they have the apps on their devices, if they don't, we talk them through how to download that system. So it's more of a guest-assisted thing where we're teaching them and training our guests, really being more informative about using the technology, and then them being super self-sufficient when they come into the store, because they are now seeing the benefits of a more contactless experience when it comes to using our technology in the store. So definitely has seen a change there.
That's great example. Sunny, how about for you guys?
One of the things that we need to look at, it maybe doesn't feel customer facing, but internally we had to adjust quite a bit as an organization to also be able to run the business virtually. So we really had to accelerate our usage and adoption of being able to use things like Teams or Zoom, and being comfortable getting leaders together virtually to make some really big, quick decisions. So when COVID first hit, we were meeting twice a day as a leadership team to talk about what does that look like. And we were having a promotional planning meeting every single day. And that promotional planning meeting became even more cross-functional and more dependent upon our digital partners on how we can first really adjust the website. So that's an area that we do have e-commerce. We did an okay amount of business, but it's always really been more of a tool that we knew 80% of the people that were going to go to a website were ultimately going to end up in our store. And so now we had to still use it as a resource for education and guide them through that shopping process, but also make it really easy for them to transact as well. So a lot of our technology was in how do we stay connected internally, and then how do we make customers feel more comfortable buying a product that historically they want to touch and feel and lay on in an online environment. So hats off to our digital team. I think they were pushing they were pushing live updates. They were pushing updates live every day, where normally you have to work in some sort of sprint cycle where they have time to make adjustments, and they really figured out how to innovate and pivot and make small tweaks every single day to improve that customer experience along the way. And our sales associates use our website as a tool as well. So they were able to, as we were rolling out new products, I mean, I think we added almost 100 new products over this time period, a lot of D2C brands that were recognizable to our guests, but maybe they didn't have the ability to buy it from the largest, most trusted retailer in mattresses. And so we added some of that product selection that gave them the best of both worlds. And our associates had to use technology quite a bit to help them get up to speed on the specs of it and how you get it delivered and what that looked like, so they felt comfortable having those conversations with
Yeah. Okay. No, that's really good. Partha, I don't know. Have you seen any deployment of technology during this in the retail world that you felt like is particularly influential with consumers?
I think, of course, we do retail education, so we have seen extraordinary adoption of technology. I was one of those people who always thought face-to-face is the best. And I think, like Christina was mentioning, that the moment I was forced into the world of Zoom, I realized it's actually a better, more productive environment, like, you know, from delivering good quality experiences if you're well prepared for it. But one of the things about technology that I feel, Craig, is technology is now the medium in which people are interacting increasingly, whether we like it or not. That's how it is going to be. The trend was there. It has just got shifted to a whole different level. But the beauty is that human psychology is such that we adapt very well. Not only do organizations adapt, but your consumers are also adapting. What was not acceptable 4 months ago is perfectly fine, in fact, even desired right now, because they are not only adapting, they are learning, and they're getting positive reinforcement from doing things the way that they never thought was possible. So as a result of which, I think going forward, what will happen is that whenever this COVID thing ends, you will have a new breed of customers that I think are more technically savvy, whether or not they want it to be so, and they'll be more comfortable engaging in online transactions regardless of what they thought about it before. So I think we'll be coming out of this in a new world, a more empowered customer. And therefore, what all of you are doing, all three of you, I mean, it is heartening to see how you had foreseen some of it and how you're adapting to it. I think you'll all be well positioned to serve the customers well. And I'm not surprised that your net positive score is improving as a result of that.
Yeah, no. And obviously, yeah, technology is everybody. You could say you were forced to do certain things. Partha, I know I can relate in that. I know when we transitioned with what we were doing in education, it was like, wait, I have to go from in person to not. Wow, I have to learn new things, and I have to learn them. But I mean, well, we had a whole week to learn all the new technology. So how hard could it be? But I'm certain that in retail, as you're deploying technology for both consumer and the teams you have inside of your organizations, right. I think Sunni, your illustration of hey, there were things we had to do inside from a technology standpoint that we weren't necessarily prepared for, and we had to do it really fast. I think is a really, really helpful perspective. One of the things that I'm curious about, and that I know retailers, and many of you have shared some of the examples of, man, we did a lot of things in response to what was happening and in order to adapt. I'm wondering, were there any things that you did maybe early on that you have kind of stopped doing, or anything that you did that you realized, yeah, that's probably not something that is going to be real value added? Anybody can take it.
I'll go, I guess.
Go ahead, Christina.
Something that we did early on, and this was definitely something that was crucial for us to do just because of the volume increase, was really implementing line metering. And when I say line metering, it was like us actually, like with a tally counter, physically counting, like on an app, how many guests are entering and exiting the building just due to capacity reasons, and just to not put everybody at risk in general. And then also the technology piece, we actually installed a digital counter now in our cameras to track how many guests are in our store. And it actually like alerts us on our My devices as to when we're approaching capacity, so that we can now in turn implement a line ambassador outside to let guests know that now we're at capacity. We will be letting guests go in and out as people basically like exit the building. So that was something that we did in the beginning that we don't necessarily do anymore. We just don't see the need for it, but it's something that's like in the shadows that if we ever needed to implement it, we know what that process looks like, and it's actually like evolving now.
Okay, and out of curiosity, was that a competency you had pre-COVID? Have you ever had to do that before?
So it wasn't, and it was actually something different that we had to like, it was something new altogether. So we had to actually like put together a folder, see what our city ordinances were, like what was actually, figure out what our store's capacity was. Like that's not something that we really talked about like ever. Especially
I know retail, you want your store full, right?
Literally,
everybody come shop.
right? So, and it's funny because with our traffic increasing, I have never seen like 400 guests at one time in my building, but this was something that started to happen. So it was really a new normal for us.
Okay, so in that case, that was something you had to do then. You've been able to pull back on it, but maybe available for later.
We're still
Sonny or
watching
Marcus, did you guys have anything in your end that you kind of started doing and were like, either we don't have to, or we've kind of pulled back on that?
Yeah, I'll be glad to share. So what we started off with at Verizon is we limited the type of transactions that customers would be able to do in our retail stores. We wanted it to be essential because we knew that we were essential to communication. But the one thing that I'm pretty sure all the panelists will say is that retail feels it's a very touch, feel, look type of environment where customers that walk into the stores, they want to be able to have that experience. And sometimes digital and online does limit that experience. I would think if I was buying a mattress, I'd want to be able to test it out before having it shipped, put in, and then say I'm going to return it, because there's also a risk that's allocated to the business. Same thing we see at Verizon. If a customer gets a device, they feel it, they look at it, and they're like, I didn't want that. I probably need to send it back. There's a cost associated to that with the company. So now what we did is we opened up the customers to be able to do any type of transaction they want. It went a long way with customer and guest experience. But those essential transactions, we're still doing our best to teach people how to be able to do those things on their own. I know I was at a different retailer recently, and when I walked in, they didn't have anybody working the checkout. And of course, they were doing the same thing a lot of retailers are doing, where everybody can do their self-checkout. And I was one of those people, just like everybody else, was like, no, I want somebody to check me out. That's somebody's job. And the person turned and looked at me and said, you know what, sir, thank you for your feedback, but I want to let you know we haven't let anybody go. What we've done is we have more people in the aisles working our store now to point you in the right direction, because doing things like scanning your own product and checking yourself out is very simple and it's easy. And so that's the one thing that made me realize, you know what, we do need to make sure that we're there for our customers the way they want us to be there, not necessarily the way I want to transact with them.
Yeah. It's a great, I like the observation too on that. Hey, this scanning thing, okay, anybody, you could kind of do it. So we're not going to put as much resource behind that, but we're going to put the resources where we can more directly engage the consumer. That's good. Sunny, how about for you guys? Anything in particular?
Yeah, I'd say by and large, what we've implemented, we're going to keep a lot of it, or at least take the lesson learned from it and apply it in a better way. Some of the things that'll fall off, I think internally I mentioned we were having 2 meetings a day, daily promo meetings. And so at the height of it, you need that amount of communication. And as it started to level off, we're pulling back from that, but we're going to pull essence of, okay, what from the daily promo planning meeting allowed us to stay connected, but how do we implement a new cadence and a new structure so that we just can't operate at that level all the time. So how do we take some of those lessons learned internally and roll them out? And then I would also say from a digital perspective, we're going to take those and understand and learn and shift. We know that we're still digging in to understand, is that a new customer? Is that a customer that would have potentially bought something different if they went into store versus buying online? Because I think we all know too, historically, a customer that's going to buy online isn't necessarily going to have a higher average order value. You really get that from going in the store, like Marcus pointed out, and having that experience, talking to someone and really kind of being able to touch, feel, and understand what you want. So we're really trying to figure out, how do we now maintain that level of digital capture? So we're capturing more people on the digital front, but also then how do we start then to shift them back to the in-store environment? Because we know ultimately that's going to be best for the guest and for our company, because they get a better, more high-touch experience on a product that is high consideration. So we're looking at not necessarily peeling those back, but how do we take the quick lessons learned? We shouldn't be pushing website updates live every day. There's just a level of QA that you can't get. We shouldn't have to direct guests to email customer care, but we just had a spike in volume because we closed down stores and so they didn't have access to associates. So we learned some lessons there of an email address isn't the best thing. Maybe there needs to be a form. We need to have more robust IVR. We need to supplement our care team in certain ways. So some of those things I think are more lessons learned versus we rolled it out and we're not going to use it anymore.
Okay. No, those are good. And I think that, events like this, traumatic events like this one, have a tendency to teach people pretty quickly. And in return, when you're going through it, you're kind of forced to learn, to learn quickly. So lots of lessons learned. So I'd like to transition.
I just wanted to add one more thing. I know
ahead.
just since we're on the subject, and I think I'm pretty sure all of us can agree, just as leadership, it's shifted like it literally shifted the way that we lead our teams, to be honest. So, I mean, the empowerment piece is huge right now, because at the end of the day, like if because guests want a contactless experience, we're really empowering our teams to make decisions that, I mean, honestly, they would call a leader for in store before. So it's really just shifting to like a level of business ownership that wasn't there before. And kind of like what Marcus and Sunny had said, just kind of shifting resources to where it needs to be is kind of like what we've been doing here in Target. So I would take, for instance, everyone's been working from home, right? Everyone, like literally parents or teachers now, everyone's homeschooling. So we saw a huge increase in our tech department that we have never seen before. And that's from printer ink to not even having TVs to you can't find a laptop. But we understood like what that experience is for our guests, and just making sure that our team members understand that there's different channels that our guests can shop. So if we don't have something in store, maybe checking on their devices to see if another store has it, or to see if we can ship it to the guest's home, right? So, and that's not something that was hugely emphasized before, because we always had it, right? We would always have a surplus coming in our shipments. So even just thinking through what business ownership looks like to our team members, and also giving them access. So like giving them access to approvals and overrides that they never had before, just to limit the amount of people in one space, has also been just a small but a big change to our guests. So versus calling a leader for an override, now the team member can actually do that override. So that was just like a small thing that I wanted to add.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I think particularly as you think about hey, look, we have a ton of people, like traffic in so many categories that we talked about was up quite a bit at certain points in time. And then as it's ramping back up, where people are beginning to get back out, those decisions, the ability to make decisions is far further from the consumer. It's, it creates friction. And that's you read a lot of what you read today is about a frictionless experience. Remove the friction as much as you can, and you win the consumer. So no, that's really good. I'd like to talk about just the future consumer experience. Like, how do you each see the customer experience changing in your environments as we go forward?
Hey, I can jump in there. So I'll start with this. What's been great to hear is that we use very similar models for feedback from our customers. Of course, we use Net Promoter Score to talk about our brand. We also introduced about 6 months ago a specific interaction score that grades how the specialist or the manager interacts directly with the consumer. It sounds like all of the other companies that are on here are doing the same thing. When I think of Target, they're the best big box retailer out there. When I think of Mattress Firm, they're first class on how they interact with people with their living and how they introduce comfort and convenience. And we pride ourselves on being a premium wireless provider. And so when a customer is comparing their experiences, they're not necessarily comparing their experiences between me and my direct competitors. They're comparing their experiences as they go from retailer to retailer. They may deal with FedEx, and then they have a great experience. They're going to want to come to Verizon and have a great experience. They may go to Target and make sure that they're using technology to showcase exactly what they can do. And the same thing with Mattress Firm. And I think customers are going to really be level set on the experience they have when they think about their digital experience at one company, and if it was the same type of environment when they go to interact at another one. So our comparison now has been industry leaders, not necessarily our direct competitors within our space. So as we move forward and as we measure our success, it's really going to be hinged on how brands are recognized and what customers think of them, whether they do business with us or not, and how they make their decisions in the future. So we are using technology to get that insight. We're using the same type of technology that everybody else is using to make sure we're interacting with our employees, creating that safe environment, creating the way that we engage each other along with our customers. So that way, all of our people that are working in the stores, all of our people that are working on the phones, they're a lot closer to that customer and they're getting that feedback directly. And we have to use that type of feedback to make our decisions on how we continue to engage and interact with those people moving forward. So it's good to know that everybody on this call is kind of doing the same type of activity in order to understand what's happening with consumer buying habits.
Yeah. That's good. Sunni or Christina, how about you in terms of the consumer experience, how you see it changing?
Yeah, I think for us, I mentioned in the beginning, we already had a plan on, we knew we needed to be a more omni-channel modern retailer that integrates the digital space with the physical space, especially knowing that it's a product that people want to touch and feel, but there are people that want to engage with us online. And that's only going to be an even more important component of how we do business. So we're looking at how do you start online, because we know most of our customers do. How do we give them the right resources to kind of self-guide them through a process that they're not that familiar with. They don't do it that often. They all kind of look the same, so it's hard to determine. So how do we become the trusted resource for them to be able to compare multiple brands in a self-guided fashion, but then easily and seamlessly transition them to a store, and they don't have to tell us all that information again. But we already have that feedback mechanism in place where we can pick up that conversation with them and help them make their decisions. So they don't have to spend a ton of time in the store if they don't want to. And then just some of the basic things that we've been talking about as well. Sanitation has never been more important. We've got to keep that high level of sanitation, especially until we have a vaccine, which we, could be years from now. And I think that's something that retailers cannot miss on, and they can't drop the ball on it. As life starts to pick up and more states open, I think people in general are getting a little more lax, but that doesn't mean that retailers can let their standards get lax as well. So we're going to have to keep that front of mind while also figuring out how, when, and where does the customer want to shop, and ultimately we need to be available to them in that space. So we're continuing to work on those pieces of technology that allow customers to do that, and then also doing more research and understanding how do we personalize that communication, that experience for different types of customers. And we're really kind of peeling back the personalization part of it, because online's going to become more important. And then how we can use those tools, we've done a segmentation study, all sorts of things that allow us to understand the customers. How do we then translate that to the associate so they can ask a few questions and understand, okay, this is the type of shopper they are. These are the things that are important to them. I need to really make sure that I am incorporating that into my presentation with them. So I think personalization was big before COVID. It's even bigger now because, like Marcus pointed out, everybody has a little bit different level of comfort on how they shop and what they expect their retailer to do. And it's going to be important that we're listening to that and we're able to customize the experience for them.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's good.
I agree. I agree 100%. I actually agree 100% with Sunni. I think what guests are looking for is really a tailored experience. I think they're looking for our team members to be very well versed on the do's and don'ts, especially when it comes to safety. I think they want a hybrid experience moving forward. I think they want to know their options. I think our guests are going to be focused more on what's convenient for them and what's safe for them and their families. So I definitely think that's going to look super different when it comes to engagement moving forward. I think our teams need to truly be teachers and trainers to really have our guests understand the technology that we're using, because I mean, even in our stores where we've just implemented an app called My Day to the point where the team member goes in, it lists their tasks for the day, and leadership is really just there for a follow-up. So like I said, like leadership even looks different. So I think our guests are expecting a different experience. I don't think they ever will expect us to go back to the way that things are before. So they're very aware and very conscious as to where they're shopping, and they're really like, in the feedback, they're looking for changes to come about. So I think our guests are looking for us to listen to them more than ever. So I think that's going to dictate where they bring their business. So like, that's why it's so important when I hear feedback, when I see feedback, I make sure that my service and engagement team is actually reaching out to that guest, whether it's a good form of feedback or a negative form of feedback. And then we're also challenging ourselves, like, how can we implement that in the store where, yes, we're still on brand, but yes, our guest that shops with us, that lives around the corner, is going to come in and see that we've listened to her, or him if it's reasonable, of course. But I think just guests seeing changes, seeing the results is really going to be that buy-in to keep our businesses going.
Yeah, it's really good. Partha, how about from your seat, the future of customer experience?
The way I see it is, previously customers were looking at few things. One is price, obviously. The other one is what they get and what kind of experiences they have around the product itself. I think a new dimension has come in, and that is the risk of engaging in this transaction or the uncertainty associated with the transaction. This is, I do not know how durable this new dimension of shopping or purchase is going to be, whether it'll endure a vaccine, or once this kind of goes back into our collective amnesia, maybe like we'll forget about this. But until that happens, I think people are going to ask a question like, no, well, what is the risk involved in engaging in this transaction? And that to me tells that the customer's preference space, as we call it, has shifted dramatically. And firms are going to be evaluated on that preference space as well, which they were not evaluated previously. And for some retail outlets, this becomes more of a challenge, and a need for adaptation will happen. The fundamental demand will be there, but the way the demand manifests will be a question of how they see the firm responding to that. I really liked some of the points that were made earlier, especially what Marcus was talking about in terms of everybody's moving digital, but a Target digital is not the same as a Mattress Firm digital, is not the same as a Verizon digital previously. But now, as we more move towards the digital space, we will expect a similar quality of interaction, the ease of doing transaction, and the ease with which we know that an order was actually placed and it's going to come, and any back and forth that happens. That is going to be something that people will start looking for. I think that's a fabulous point. I never thought about that before.
Yeah, it's a great
yeah,
point.
and so I think risk is going to be more prominent, and ease of using digital is going to become more prominent. There will be a shift in what people consume, but I really think, in my view, this is a time where consumer has become more engaged, not less, because they are thinking, they are wondering what it is that they really want. They are scrutinizing the retailers. So this is a fabulous learning opportunity, once in a century kind of an opportunity to forge new relationships with customers. You come out well here and you communicate strongly that you understood how they want things to be different, and offer those products and services. I think you're going to come out as a fabulous brand on the back end of this equation, because this kind of spotlight on the retailer customer interaction has never been there before, and it will never be there again going forward. So it is up to, I think, both the academia and the actual executives, the people who do the business, and the customers, to learn from this extraordinary moment and craft new products and services and new ways of doing business that will make things better for everybody, I think.
It's really good. Yeah, thanks. That's a great summary too, I think, Partha, of kind of the thematic conversations we've had even, today, themes around, health and safety of the shopping environment, the level of engagement, both digitally with the consumer and then personally when you're in the store. and then just this evolving consumer experience of being. I like the word tailored, Christina. I haven't heard that word used before to describe the consumer. Customized and personalized have kind of been the buzzwords for a while, but then tailored as well, so that, hey, I buy it where I want, when I want, and it's easy as possible. I can relate to your point, Partha, on your expectation. Like the first time I drove up to a store and they brought it out and they put it in my trunk without me having to touch anything. Now that's like my standard of measure. I'm thinking, wait, you're not bringing it out and putting it in my trunk? I have to do something? What is wrong with you, with this store? So I think but those types of service things will evolve. So no, that's really great. Hey, we do have a little bit of time for some questions, and we did have a couple that came up in our chat segment. The first one was just about online versus brick and mortar. Obviously, both of you big presence in each. Curious how you saw the shift during COVID. I think as a general rule, online picked up, but was it much more dramatic than what any of you had historically expected?
Yeah. Hey, so I'll start with our online versus our brick and mortar, or I should say accompanied by our brick and mortar. We actually also have agent locations, I think historically called franchises, that did not follow the same guidelines that we did in our corporate-owned doors. And so we were able to use that as a baseline to determine really the impact of brick and mortar versus online now compared to our corporate-owned doors. And yes, their swings did pick up. They did see the impact, but they did not see the drastic impact that we saw online or through our app utilization. Now that our doors are back open, Verizon tends to have the same reaction as the overall economy does, but not to the same effect. So our door percentages have gone up as we've reopened a lot of our corporate-owned doors, but our online and our franchise distribution has had kind of that same ebb and flow, where they really haven't had the huge lift in our door swings on the distribution level. So I saw that question coming earlier, and I thought about it and did a little analysis on our numbers to see what we have in our agent doors. And it really did show up that our online did pick up. Our customers that traditionally go into our corporate-owned doors did go online, but they now are shifting back into our corporate-owned doors. But our agent locations kind of maintain that same stability of just being on track to meet all their budgeted numbers that we started off the year with.
That's good.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
So we definitely saw a shift here with our digital business, so much so that we're actually implementing, I want to say in 2 weeks, grocery into our order pickups, which will include perishable goods that we didn't do before, just because we've seen a surge in the demand for the want for that. We also are up in triple digits when it comes on a daily basis and for the year in our digital business. So we definitely saw that being like a driving force to go ahead and expand grocery into that realm of being able of honestly purchasing for our guests. But I would definitely say, I mean, it hasn't slowed down for us. I think guests that never used order pickup and drive up before, just because of the fear of technology, like they'll come in and say, can you show me how to use this? Can you show me how to add this to my shopping cart? Or can you show me how to download this app? So I've been getting that a ton, like more than ever. So I can definitely say, like, I see it myself. I've definitely seen an increase in like our red cards and our Target Circle usage. So there's ways that we can track that, and like reporting that we look at on a daily basis to just track those areas of our business. That's definitely a key factor there. And then it also got to a point where we had to reimagine like what our holding space for all of those purchases look like. So we've actually taken away half of my swim floor pad, which is actually a huge business for us as well, and increased our order pickup space. So I don't think that's anything that's going away anytime soon. I think we're gonna have to just kind of like reimagine what that looks like in the future.
Yeah,
it
seems like big,
more and more.
Yeah, big shifts, e-commerce overall, and then it settled down some. Sunni, there's a specific question for you around the digital landscape and how it changes so much. And it was, how does Mattress Firm stay adaptable while it's shifting the way it shifts?
Yeah, I don't know that when you hear Mattress Firm, you're like, oh, they must be on like the cutting edge of digital. But there's actually a lot to be learned in the mattress space, and also across retail. So we definitely look to best in class retail. We we have hired a lot of talent that has expertise in the digital space, whether it's through our vertical of mattress and furniture or other areas, so that we can stay ahead of it. But we also have great insight and analytics teams that help us understand what do those consumer behaviors look like, so that we can adapt the digital business. The great thing about digital is that it leaves a footprint, and so you have much more insight into consumer behaviors, what they're doing, why they're doing it, than brick and mortar. But the magic is then now bringing the two together. We are never going to be a primarily e-com business. Our brick and mortar is part of what makes us a really great retailer. But if we want to stay a great retailer, we have to elevate the digital side of it. So I guess to answer your question, we hire really good talent that knows how to stay on top of it. We are investing in technology and making sure that it's not just technology for the sake of saying we have it, but that it can be integrated and implemented in our stores as well. And then we're also investing in making sure that we understand the customer. We're following their digital journey and then trying to stitch that together from online to offline, because that's a big part of our businesses. They're going to come to our website, exhibit some behaviors, whether they're researching or buying, and then they'll likely come to our store as well. So we have invested a lot in making sure that we understand what that full journey looks like.
Yeah, that's great. I think we've got time for one more question, and this is an interesting question because it comes from the angle of, I think, if I know all of you deal with suppliers of products, and for somebody who's selling to an organization, it's this question around how has product training or kind of coaching opportunities changed, and how do people need to be thinking about that going into the future with your teams?
Hey, so the evolution has changed. Before it was a lot of structured feedback, what success looks like. Now we're introducing a new model within our teams to make sure that we are allowing people to be the best version of themselves. So we, of course, I know the old saying is you hire people so they can tell you what to do. I would like to share with you, think about it like a personal trainer. If you want to get great at something, when you go to the personal trainer, they don't tell you what your body needs to look like. You have to tell them your goals. And then they give you a plan, a cadence, a type of setup that allows you to go and be basically self-disciplined around improving your own skill set. And so that's the model that we're using now, where our team members meet with either our learning development team, or they'll meet with their location leaders or with their territory leaders, and they determine, hey, this is what I want to become great at. And then that leader partners with them to come up with a plan to become great. And then there's just a check-in phase. We're not going to micromanage it. I believe that people get the best reactions and interactions and feedback from the people that they're trying to serve, which is the customers and the employee that works on their team. And so if we can continue just to evolve that and continue just to help everybody understand what the next steps are in their own personal development, it allows them to own their own development, it allows them to own their own career, it allows them to really enhance that customer as well as employee engagement when we're trying to make things just better for the customer experience.
Hey, that's a great model change. I know we're coming up on just a wrap up time. but I want Christina and Sunni, maybe you can each give your quick hit on hey, how to think about this differently.
I think just in general, I think simplicity is going to be key. I think we shouldn't try to overcomplicate it. I think we have the technology. I think we have all the information. I think just the follow-up piece is going to be key, and really validating for understanding moving forward is going to be super crucial. Just because I know in my store, my team members and my leaders have direct interaction with the guests. So it's so important that they truly understand and that we check for that understanding. I think the partnership with my HR in the building is going to look super different going forward. It's like, we're not behind a desk. We're really on the floor observing specific behaviors and going after certain things to really close the gaps with our team. Because at this point, like where we're at with this pandemic, I mean, really almost a crisis, we can't afford to make mistakes in the realm of safety. So I think just being on the floor, being super involved, over communicating and really checking for that understanding, and the follow-up piece being like super, super crucial.
And I would just add, at Mattress Firm, we're fortunate where we already have a history of really robust and in-depth learning and development, and we already had a really great online platform to do that. Since we're a little bit unique retailer in that we don't necessarily have 100 employees in one location, we may have one employee at one location, and a district manager has to manage up to 30 people. So it's hard for them to do that face-to-face anyway. But I think that this was now something that was maybe like it was a necessary tool. Just because I couldn't do it, it became an even more critical and vital tool for us to use that. And then we also just assessed, what does the role of an associate look like? We started to lean a lot more into social selling. We opened contactless stores where a customer couldn't actually come in, but our associates were leaning on their social networks or marketplace type networks to still attract traffic in some way where they could communicate with them over the phone. And so we're taking those things and now weaving them into some of the basic foundations that we already have from a training and recruiting platform. And so it's really just kind of evolved our thinking on what are the skill sets that our people need to have. And that includes being well-versed in technology and embracing it and making sure that you're leaning into it so that you can provide a good customer experience.
That's awesome. Thank you, Sunny. And look, I want to thank everybody. We're up at our time, so I want to wrap it up by first thanking our panelists. Virtual applause. We appreciate the time and the wisdom and the insight that you guys brought. It's spectacular. And then for those of you who joined, we hope that you've picked up a few things that you can take back to your business to help during this time. I think, it might sound like a bumper sticker, we're all in this together, but the truth is we are, kind of how the economy works. And so hopefully this has given you something to take back, or at minimum, some things to think about inside of your organization. And then I'll wrap up with this, that if you are interested in learning anything more about the Sales Excellence Institute at University of Houston and a handful of upcoming events, additional webinars, and some specific workshops we have set up around digital selling, digital branding, things that are really relevant today, you can visit our website at bauer.uh.edu, and then it's /SEI, or you can just search the Stephen Stagner Sales Excellence Institute at the University of Houston, and you can click on the executive education option, and then you can learn more about what we have going on. But we appreciate the time that everybody has put in, appreciate the chance to do this, and on behalf of University of Houston, we hope that we get a chance to interact with everybody again soon. So thank you guys.
Thank you
very much.
All right, thank
Thank
you.